Hello dear learners, I welcome you all to this interesting module on Language and Literary Skill as a part of the MOOC on Introduction to Functional English. In this module, we shall discuss some of the most important aspects of English language such as the figure of speech, which is the first and the foremost, second, one-word substitution, and the last but the most important being phrases and idioms and many more to deal. As we progress through this module, it is expected that you have been able to realize the importance of English in the 21st century. You have learned that communicating with the English language is also a skill. To help you do so, the modules up till now were mainly dealing with the introductory concepts of English as a language of communication in the 21st century. This was done with the intention to help learners get a better access to English as a popular language of communication in the globalized world. So the main objectives of this particular model are, first, to discuss the various aspects of English language and literary skills. Second, to learn about the various tools of communication, which is going to be the most central part of this module, such as the figure of speeches, one-word substitution, phrases, and idioms. And the third objective that we have is to use the English language in such a way with these tools as a helping hand and use them in a practical field. While the previous modules have dealt with English as a language, this module particularly will aim to introduce critical thinking and analysis of information among readers, that is you all. At this point, it becomes important for us to understand that while many may associate English language and literature as a common idea, the reality is not so. Despite this, the derivation could be seen popular even today. This is because both the words have often been used interchangeably. The understanding of the difference between the two is very important for us now to get a better understanding of how to exchange messages in communication and as well as enhance our abilities of expression. This attempt shall further enable us to understand the functional importance and relevance of English today in the globalized world as we are making a change. In this module, an attempt shall be made to understand the conceptual framework of both the terms as it would help us thereafter to enhance both our literary and language skills to its optimal level. Towards this end, this module shall initially aim to help learners understand the concept of language and literary skills and their essential differences in discursive practices. After establishing language as a vehicle to literature, we shall then attempt to explore ways to enhance literary skills by understanding and applying common types of literary devices, idioms, phrases, and one-word substitution in both creative and critical writing. Such an effort would eventually allow readers to upgrade their writing style to better express their ideas to others. In addition to this, we will also talk about common idioms and phrases which shall be mentioned in a separate section that will be provided to you through the reading material with sample sentences to guide the learners on how they can use them in a daily expression. Alongside a list of one-word substitution will be provided in the same reading material as a pattern on how the readers can actually improve their communication skill. Because communication skill, I would like to mention here, is not just a theoretical practice, but it needs to be inculcated as a formulatic device which we should improvise daily by using it, and this entire module is actually aimed to do so. Understanding language and literary skill is what we will focus now. Keeping the overview of this model into consideration, it becomes important for us to understand that language is a human method of communication that works on a system that consists of patterns and rules by putting together elements such as sounds to make words and words to make sentences. And then when violated, this results in a loss of meaning. In this sense, language must always appear as a complex system of information sharing for most of us. Using language as a medium, literature tries to cover a wide range of writing that includes anything from creative writing to more technical and scientific work. It is a creative way of expressing ideas in a unique way that is your own and a very personal effort done by the learners. This makes literature appear as a tool that helps in emphasizing both the idea and a unique way of expressing the same idea. Since it focuses more on communicating experiences, its functional skills seems important to generate a better set of quality for communication. While the study of literary skills may vary from beginners to advanced stages, this module shall aim to introduce the most common types of literary skills, figure of speeches, idiom, phrases, and one-word substitution, so as to introduce learners to the basic technical ways of enhancing their use of English in communication. In fact, the skill of good communication in English seems to have become an integral part in the multicultural era of our globalized society, where English is now associated as a global lingua franca. This has further made acquiring the language and its literary skill a useful attribute and as well a vital necessity to make one's mark in the personal spaces as well as professional dynamic sectors. The increased demand and popularity of English in almost all sectors and its uses in most parts of the world has further made it a desirable requirement in academia, business, and communication. In this context, there is now a need to master it for life. Realizing the importance of English communication, this module should concentrate in efforts in giving access to a few common but significant language and literary functional skills so that the learners, by the end of it, can better structure their communicative patterns of presentation. As this module shall engage in practical learning of English communication, here are a few examples and exercises provided so that you have a better experience in learning. First, that we will deal is the figure of speeches. As mentioned through the previous models, there are many ways to enhance one's functional skills in communication. One of the most remarkable method and the most apt is the inclusion and usage of figure of speeches in communication. This language and literary technique has mainly been used by learners to create a direct impact among their listeners by emphasizing appropriate emotions and responses while also making the expression more presentable and formal. Figure of speeches in language and literary skills are considered as powerful tools by learners to improve their scope of expression. There are many types of figure of speeches that have a different function that each of them perform to emulate the meaning or knowledge to the hearer or the receiver. In this model, we shall limit our scope to a few commonly used figure of speeches in our daily life, namely simile, metaphor, irony, personification, hyperbole, and alliteration. First, we will start with what is a simile. A simile is a common technique used in communication to illustrate a direct comparison between two things, action, or feeling using the words such as, or like. In this, what we do is rather than giving a comparison that is not commonly found, we try to connect two ideas that are relatively different from each other and present it to the readers by associating the two different ideas using words such as, like, and such as. For understanding this better, I have a few examples for you. The first example is the presentation was given by Rahul bravely as a lion in the jungle. Here, in this sentence, we see that Rahul and lion have been compared as in the same idea, and because of the mention of the word as, we see that this becomes a simile and no other literary device. Likewise, you will see a very similar technique to a simile is a metaphor, which aims to provide a vivid description and clarification in expressing our communication by again comparing two different ideas. But here, the comparison is not a direct one, but an indirect one. Therefore, its engagement with the readers or the learners is much more. Therefore, over the years, it has been considered the most important and widespread literary device. And here we see one idea, one thing or action is referred to by a word or expression normally denoting another thing, idea or action so as to suggest the same common quality shared between the two. A metaphor then is something that deals with resemblance that is assumed as an imaginary identity. So what you are thinking in your mind is where the link between the two ideas happen, and that is where metaphors are made possible. This creative attribute of a metaphor is mentioned by many critics as the most effective way of exchange of ideas between readers and communicators. Here we see a sense of similarity is being created to a new image. Although traditionally metaphor is considered as a key component of creativity in poems or poetic composition, the 1970s acknowledged the presence of metaphor in an ordinary use of language. Here we see after the 1980s, the use of metaphor came and became a part of our daily life, and we now know that we essentially have always been metaphorical beings. So, to enhance your skills of communication to a more advanced level, using metaphors and simile becomes very important for us. So, an example of metaphor is that I would like to give to you all is that a job is but a dream. Here, you want to do a job, but it is something that you know it is impossible, almost a dream-like situation. So here, job and dream has become the same. But here we see there is no mention of words such as, like, making it a complete metaphor of a situation. Second is time is money. Here, time and money are associated as the same idea, but there is no direct linkage between the two. And because there is no direct linkage, it is our imagination that makes us associate, where we see the interaction now between the reader and the learner with the ideas are more strong. And therefore we can say that it allows us to think and allows us to showcase our level of intellectualism also. Next, I would like to talk about personification. It is closely related to metaphor, for it seeks to attach animal, abstract ideas or inanimate things with human attributes, meaning that animal and the natural world are given human attributes. They are made to become and feel and behave as human, although they are not. We feel more associated to them, and these informations that we use through a personification also comes from the level of our knowledge to a maximum effect. So it also tells the readers or your communicator your understanding of the world and how you perceive things. It is a presentation also of your personality along with your communication technique. Here, another most important example that I would like to give you is, she sat down at the tired, overlooked table. Here, the table is considered tired and overworked, while she is also considered the same. So, the table is given the attributes of tired and overworked, while also being given the genderization of a she. Because we see women in society work harder and are often more tired and are always silent like a table. So there's a lot of associations of so many ideas being put to this sentence. Please look into this in your reader material and you will find it very interesting. There are many more examples here that you will find. It will help you all in engaging better with this entire communication course. Now, next we will discuss irony as a figure of speech, which is nothing but a humorous perception of statements or events. Here, we are not saying exactly what we mean, but we are saying what we don't mean, but in a crude and in a very indirect way, so as to hint the other. This is done either with a comical element or sometimes to be very sarcastic. This is also important. The listener sometimes understand what you're trying to feel so that they can also respond to you correctly. It flatters its intelligence of the learners as it attempts to convey meaning different from and usually opposite to what has been told by the respondent. Like symbolism, allegory, and metaphor, irony provides a means of unifying the apparent contradictions of experiences. So what you're saying and what you're thinking and what you're trying to express do not have any kind of commonality. And because it has nothing common, it gets the readers and the learners to think what is the real meaning and where is it. It allows you to participate in the communication process. Its uses is often intended, like I said, to produce comedy or sarcasm. An example will make it more easier for you. The traffic police got his license suspended because of unpaid parking tickets. We never expect a traffic police to ever get suspension for parking ticket, but when they do, it becomes an ironical situation because it is them who make us get unpaid parking tickets, and therefore we have our license suspended. Next that I would like to talk about is hyperbole, another very significant figure of speech that uses tools of exaggeration in communication for emphasizing certain parts of the conversation. This is important when you want to talk about an idea but stress on certain attributes of it, that you start to overstatement the particular idea that you're trying to convey to your audience, and therefore you try to put extra efforts in it so as to make it a possibility by either putting an effect of seriousness, irony, or comic. An example of this kind will be the helmet is killing the biker. It is generally understood that a biker should use a helmet because it is for his own protection of life. But now we see it is trying to kill him. This could be because of a hot weather or because of some other factors that the biker's helmet is not fitting him well. So it becomes a hyperbolic statement here. And the last we would like to talk about in this particular module of the last alliteration, but not the least, because the list is endless, but for your preference of learning, we have limited ourselves only to 6. The last, like I said, is going to be alliteration. It is a common technique used in verse and prose where there is repetition of the same sounds, usually with the initial consonants of words being stressed. The repetition is generally done with the intention to closely connect the words with each other so as to get the full attention of the hearer or the receiver in its totality. It is mainly used as an optional or incidental decorative effect where which consonants, especially at the beginning of the words or stressed syllabi, are repeated. An example of this I would like to give is the capable, careful carpenter. So the C's in the sentences are getting repeated, the K and the care and the car. So you see the capable, careful carpenter. This repetition of the CA at the beginning of the 3 words that we have in the sentence makes it a perfect example of alliteration. To be more relevant to an example of this kind, I would like to give you the slogan of KFC, finger licking good. So this is another alliteration that you find on a daily life. Next, I think we can discuss another important tool of communication, which is idioms and phrases. An idiom is a phrase that is commonly used and is popular amongst people in the daily life uses of English to express certain ideas or opinions. They share cultural and historical information and broaden people's understanding of language. Idioms will have certain distinctive features but differ from one language to another. Since it is already a known statement, it makes it very relatable for the audience, and because they are finding it relatable, they get more engaged in the communication process. Idioms are particularly useful as they give us a new and creative way of expressing ourselves. It makes the expression more complex but also very interesting. In fact, it helps us to practically improve our communication skill while also making us comfortable but very confident, which is an attribute that we all need to inculcate in the communication process. Another idiom, additionally, idioms not only enrich our language and literary awareness but also adds the features of precision, fluency, and less monotonous mood in our conversation. What this helps is it keeps the audience intact to listening to you. They would want to listen to you more and more because you are exactly telling what they want to hear. So idioms and phrases sometimes comes as a best friend while you're communicating, and especially when you're presenting in front of a larger audience. It also enhances our thinking ability, confidence, and overall presentation of our personality, as they're generally seen as a sign of intellectualism. So you can show people that you know things that other people might think that you might not know. For the benefit of this learning process, I have provided a table in the reading material which will be provided to you all. A few idioms that I would like to discuss, very commonly told, is a blessing in disguise. Another, bit around the bush. These two idioms, particularly a blessing in disguise, talks about a good thing that seems to be bad at the beginning but turns out to be a beautiful event in one's life. Beat around the bush is trying to tell you in its meaning that don't talk unnecessarily but get straight to the point. And in communication, beating around the bush is something you should avoid. Next tool that we will consider is the one-word substitution. As we live in a fast-moving world of the globalized era, time has become a valuable asset. Caught in this contemporary hustle culture and the digital media, the concentration span of each individual has become very minimal. Although this is an unfortunate stage, we have to take it as a challenge in communication, and this particular activity is going to help you get that. Because if you talk too much in a sentence, you might cause distraction because you might become monotonous and you might become irrelevant. So, longer conversations and write-up is something you should try avoiding because it might repel the listener or the learner into engaging in a conversation. Realizing this problem as a common trait across multimedia humans, there have been efforts or there will be efforts made in this particular model to engage readers and viewers through shorter forms of communication. One of the most effective practice that has been able to overcome this problem is one-word substitution, which allows us to express a lot in a very small phrase or in a very small word in itself. This not only makes the communication concise, formal and fluent, but also interesting and less invasive. And that is when people will want to listen to you. In fact, the use of technical language to describe an idea can also highlight the speaker's intellectualism. So you see, all these tools are actually your friend and nothing to be really afraid of. Realizing its benefit, the inclusion of one-word substitution could be seen as an essential skill in communication. In the present generation, definitely so. In order to help in the inculcation of this habit, I again have given a long list of one-word substitution which will help you to introduce this as a lifestyle change. And once you get comfortable, you will realize that it will make you more confident in yourself. Also, I would like to tell at this point that although these are language and literary skills, but without reading, is there any way to get to a proper communication? Without actually talking, is there a proper way that you can become an effective communicator? These two things are related. Reading, learning, and speaking go hand in hand. Okay, so to make it more accessible for you all, I have provided the list as mentioned in the reading material, but for the sake of your convenience, I'm giving you 2-3 examples. One, for whom the world is a home. He's called the cosmopolitan. This is a very frequent word that we use, but we get confused with the idea of a metropolitan. Metropolitan is basically the cities that is in the tier 1 with certain modes and types of development. But cosmopolitan is not that. They are more democratic, more modern, and more open-minded. Another most important example that I would want to use is something that cannot be taken away. Inalienable. We always say that experiences are something that we can cherish for our life and it cannot be taken away. This is what we can describe as inalienable. Another one is a person who is always dissatisfied, never happy with anything that they have done or is about to do. Such people can be called a malcontent. So you have to understand that using certain words actually makes your presentation more powerful. And to get into a better state of communication, you have to purposefully at the beginning go through this complex process of understanding what are the different types of communication. But once you acquire it, there is nothing to fear. Following this entire reading of the module, now I can say that you might be feeling more confident in yourself. But to sum it up, this module aimed to provide the basic and effective practical ways to enhance your functional language and literary skills in English. For this purpose, let's remember, tried to talk about figures of speeches, one-word substitution, idioms, and phrases. I know you all remembered. We introduced it in a very basic note so that as you progress to the other modules, you will have a more decent understanding. In the next module particularly, we will discuss another important idea, which is ESP and language skills, where English will be considered and taught as an academic lingua franca, which will then be able to guide you for a better scope of improvement in your personal, academic, social and professional opportunity. And we, through this effort, is trying to help you achieve this, because in the competitive world that we live today, it is important that communication is seen as a friend and not something to be worried about. With this note, I would like to bid farewell. See you all soon. Till then, take care.